The sun blazed mercilessly over Hawthorne Elite Range, its glass and steel walls gleaming like a trophy polished by wealth. Inside, privilege hung in the air thicker than the smell of gunpowder. Only the chosen few, children of power, heirs of fortune, veterans of high ranks, were allowed beyond the velvet rope. At the front gate, Elena Cross stood, an outsider stitched into the wrong picture. Her jacket, a faded olive relic, looked absurd against the sharp-tailored tactical gear streaming past her. The M1 Garand slung over her shoulder drew stares too, an antique in a temple of carbon fiber and laser scopes. She wore no makeup, no logos, no designer armor. Only quiet focus and a legacy that clung to her like a second skin. Miles Grant, the receptionist, blocked her path with a smirk sharpened by too many years of looking down on people. His eyes skimmed her like she was a lost stray. "VIP lanes aren't open to the confused and misplaced," he said, loud enough for the lounge behind him to hear. Laughter rippled from a group of young elites lounging nearby. Logan Price, dressed in a $5,000 tracksuit, leaned back against a pillar, his voice dripping with mockery. "They letting in janitors now?" he called out, sparking a round of jeering from his pack of trust fund hyenas. Elena said nothing. Her fingers brushed the worn edge of a small, battered card tucked in her pocket, the VIP pass her father's commanding officer had once handed her, a symbol of earned loyalty, not inherited privilege. She held it out. Miles Grant's scanner beeped green. The smirk on his face flickered, replaced by a tight jaw. "Still," he muttered, "mistake," under his breath as he stepped aside. But the damage was done. Every eye in the lounge turned to her, their amusement a wall she had to walk through. As Elena moved forward, her boots scuffing softly against the marble floor, the members' phones lit up like fireflies, capturing her walk of shame for their private feeds. Captions bloomed across screens. "Welfare shooter at Hawthorne. Guess they're letting in the cleaning crew now. Someone call security before she polishes the floors." Their cruelty moved like smoke, thick and choking. Elena walked on, silent, each step heavier than the last, her father's voice echoing in her memory. "You don't explain your worth, you prove it." Inside the lounge, the air reeked of espresso and arrogance. Leather chairs cradled bodies clothed in money. Gold-plated rifles leaned in polished racks. She was a crack in their mirror, a stain on their perfection. Carter Hayes, slouched nearby, flicked a coffee stirrer at her boots. "Maybe she's here to mop up after real shooters," he said, his laughter low and cruel. Elena didn't flinch. Her hands remained steady. Her braid, loose and sunlit, swung behind her like a banner of quiet defiance. Across the room, Dr. Lydia Stone, a senior coach with the kind of cold beauty honed in boardrooms, raised an eyebrow. "This is highly irregular," she said, her voice slicing through the lounge. "Hawthorne is for trained professionals, not charity projects dragging museum pieces." The laughter grew sharper, meaner. In the crowd, Sienna Drake, a sharpshooter turned part-time influencer, aimed her phone camera with deadly precision. "Smile, sweetheart," she sneered. "This'll make a great blooper reel." Comments flooded the live stream. "Kick her out." "Trash in the VIP lane." Elena's face stayed still, her hazel eyes fixed forward, but on a hospital screen somewhere far away, her mother's hands clenched painfully as she watched the insults roll in. The smell of scorn was everywhere now, thick as blood and water. Every step Elena took felt heavier than the last. She didn't know it yet, but the fire being stoked around her would soon be the very thing that forged her legend. And the ones laughing loudest were about to fall the hardest. The deeper Elena moved into Hawthorne Elite Range, the thicker the contempt became. It clung to her like smoke, impossible to brush off. At the far end of the lounge, a wall of screens displayed live feeds of the shooting lanes. Every perfect shot, every slip, broadcast in real time to members sipping overpriced lattes on leather couches. Today, Elena was the entertainment. Sienna Drake zoomed her phone on Elena's boots, captioning it, "VIP? More like misplaced pawn." The live stream flooded with laughing emojis. Near the gear locker, Logan Price lounged like a king on his throne, his polished rifle gleaming. "You sure you know which end of that fossil you're supposed to hold?" he called across the lounge, his friends cackling on cue. At the sign-in station, Major Donovan Briggs, a decorated ex-Marine turned head coach, noticed the disruption. His brow furrowed as he scanned Elena's figure, her faded jacket, the scarred rifle stock, the quiet defiance in her posture. he snorted. Is this a prank? He barked to no one in particular, his voice carrying. VIP lanes are for elite competitors, not museum exhibits. Laughter swelled, louder now, fueled by authority. Ava Sinclair, a teenager wrapped in designer gear, snatched a crumpled scorecard from the counter and tossed it toward Elena. Make yourself useful, she said sweetly, fake concern dripping from every syllable. The paper skidded across the floor, brushing Elena's boot. She didn't react. Her hands stayed at her sides, steady. Her hazel eyes, though, sharpened, like a storm gathering in silence. Nearby, Grayson Wolfe, the golden boy of Hawthorne, beloved heir of a tech empire, noticed the brewing scene. His smile curled lazily as he sauntered over, rifle slung casually over one shoulder. He was everything Hawthorne worshipped, rich, athletic, lethal. And he smelled blood in the water. If you beat me, Grayson said, his voice carrying easily through the lounge, I'll leave, right here, right now. He leaned closer, his breath warm and mocking. But if I win, you walk out that door and never show your face here again. The crowd inhaled sharply. Phones came up like a forest of judgment. The live stream audience exploded. Do it! She won't last 3 shots. Elena didn't move. Didn't blink. Just met Grayson's gaze, her hazel eyes unflinching, her silence heavier than 1,000 words. The challenge was set. Major Briggs stepped closer, arms crossed, his clipboard held like a judge's gavel. This is an elite facility, he said, his voice cold. We don't babysit amateurs. We'll humor you this once, then you'll know where you belong. Another round of laughter cut through the room. It was no longer just mockery, it was war. As Elena stepped toward lane 8, the weight of the lounge's hatred pressed against her chest like a physical force. Mocking comments chased her down the hall. Hope she doesn't shoot her own foot. Bet that rifle falls apart on the first shot. Carter Hayes tossed a spent coffee cup at her feet. You missed a spot, janitor, he called. Elena's braid swung slightly as she walked, serene, a whisper of movement amid the storm. At the far end of the room, the director himself, Samuel Hart, watched from behind the glass wall of his office, arms folded, eyes narrowed. He said nothing. Yet, because deep down, something about the girl in the battered jacket unsettled him. Maybe it was her stillness. Maybe it was her silence. Or maybe it was the calm that always comes before a storm. The shooting lane stretched before Elena like a gauntlet. 50 meters of polished floor and sterile air. 50 meters of disdain pressing down on her from every angle. Above, the giant digital scoreboard pulsed, already flashing the names of champions. Grayson Wolfe gleaming in gold letters, crowned with accolades from tournaments and sponsorships. The gap between them wasn't just skill. It was legacy, wealth, bloodline. Elena's lane was number 8. Far enough from the center to feel isolated, but close enough that everyone could watch. And they would. They already had. As she stepped onto the firing platform, the lounge behind her buzzed like a hive of cruelty. Logan Price called out from the leather couches, "Try not to embarrass yourself too badly, Cinderella." Laughter rolled in waves. Even the instructors, their faces schooled into fake neutrality, allowed small smirks to flicker across their mouths. Sienna Drake, perfectly poised in her tactical designer jacket, adjusted her live stream angle, ensuring the entire internet could witness the impending humiliation. "Watch the charity case eat dust," she whispered to her 300,000 followers. Elena didn't hear the comments, but she felt them, thick and hot against her skin. Her breathing slowed, her heart steady. Her father's voice, a soft ghost in her mind. They can mock your clothes, your rifle, your face, but they can't touch your aim. Across the aisle, Grayson prepared. His rifle, custom, sleek, lethal, looked almost theatrical under the overhead lights. He loaded around with a smoothness that bespoke years of private coaching and Olympic training. Major Briggs stood beside the firing line, clipboard ready, eyebrows raised as if daring Elena to make a fool of herself. Carter Hayes, sitting lazily on the viewing benches, whistled. "Maybe after you miss your first shot, you can apply for a janitor's job here. They need someone to polish the floors you'll be crying on." Another ripple of laughter. Ava Sinclair leaned forward, tossing her long hair dramatically. "If you cry, sweetie, tilt your face. Better lighting for the live stream." Elena said nothing. She laid the M1 Garand on the shooting stand. Its worn wood gleamed faintly under the surgical lights, each scratch a story, each dent a memory. Grayson fired first. His movement was effortless, confident. Bang! The board lit up. 10.0, another shot. Bang! 9.9, another. Bang! 10.0. Cheers erupted from the lounge. Phones rose higher, capturing every decimal, every flash of brilliance. Grayson turned, grinning wide, lifting an eyebrow as if to say, "Your turn, relic." The crowd buzzed louder, anticipation sharpening into cruelty. Director Samuel Hart, standing behind a panel of smoked glass, watched with narrowed eyes. The entire range, from janitorial staff to billionaire patrons, leaned forward, tasting the blood in the water. Elena moved with mechanical precision. She checked the sights, loaded the clip, positioned her feet shoulder-width apart. Someone, maybe Logan, maybe Carter, made a kissing noise toward her. Another wave of laughter. Her hands stayed still. Only her fingers tightened slightly around the rifle's grip, so subtly only someone studying her would notice. The room seemed to lean in closer, holding its breath. A single bead of sweat traced the back of her neck under the hot lights, but she didn't lift her hand to wipe it away. The M1 Garand was heavy, older than most of the people laughing at her. It didn't matter. The crowd's contempt pressed harder now, a wall of noise she had to punch through. Phones filmed. Comments flooded. "Goodbye, fossil girl." "First shot," Miss guaranteed. "Fake it till you break it." Behind her, Major Briggs' voice cut sharply. "You have one chance, Miss Cross," he barked. "Make it count, or step aside." Grayson's chuckle followed, soft but cruel. "No pressure, sweetheart." Elena exhaled. Slow, deep. The sound of her own breath louder than the jeering behind her. The barrel aligned with the distant target. 50 meters. Small red center ring glowing like a heartbeat. Her father's voice again. "It's not about the rifle, it's about the soul behind it." For one suspended moment, she saw nothing but the target. Not the marble floors, not the velvet ropes. Not the sneers curling the edges of 100 privileged mouths. Only the shot. Across the lounge, a barista spilled a latte. Someone dropped a phone. The room pulsed with savage anticipation. Grayson leaned against the wall, arms crossed, smirking. Major Briggs's clipboard creaked under his tightening fingers. Even Sienna's fingers trembled slightly as she tried to steady her live stream. Because deep down somewhere they would never admit, they were afraid. Afraid of what a girl in a faded jacket might do. Afraid of what it would mean if she didn't fall apart. Afraid that everything they believed about privilege, about breeding, about worthiness, might crack wide open. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. The whole world leaned closer. The silence stretched tight, ready to snap. And then, bang, the shot cracked through the air, slicing the tension clean in half. The digital board above the range blinked once, then flashed. 10.0, a perfect shot. The lounge went still. Phones froze in midair. Laughter choked off like a candle snuffed by a sudden wind. Someone, somewhere, whispered, "No way." Elena didn't look at them, didn't allow herself a flicker of satisfaction. She reloaded, her movements smooth, disciplined. Bang. 10.0 again. This time the silence wasn't shock, it was terror. A primitive fear, deep and involuntary, the moment when the wolf realizes the sheep had fangs all along. Elena's face remained serene, her braids swaying with the small shifts of her body. Shot 3. Bang. 10.0. The range's system chimed, a rare congratulatory melody, 3 perfect tens. Grayson's smirk faltered. Logan Price sat up straighter, his joking banter evaporated. Sienna Drake lowered her phone slightly, the smug curve of her lips slipping into something harder to define. Was it fear? Was it awe? Shot 4. Bang. 10.0. Now every eye was on her. No more laughter, no more whispers, only the sound of 1,000 hopes crumbling. Major Briggs stood rigid beside the scoring table, his clipboard trembling slightly. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Across the glass wall, Director Samuel Hart leaned forward, his breath fogging the window. He could not look away. Shot 5. Bang. 10. Somewhere behind her, a $4,000 designer coffee cup crashed to the floor, forgotten by trembling fingers. Grayson's confident stance shifted, his arms no longer crossed but tensed against his chest. Shot 6. Bang. 10. The lounge, once a palace of mockery, became a cathedral of silence. Even the ceiling lights seemed to hum quieter. The digital feed to the live stream exploded. Who is she? This is unreal. New legend being born. Shot 7. Bang. 10.0. Sienna Drake tore her optics from her eyes, unable to watch her own humiliation unfold. Carter Hayes slumped in his seat, hands limp at his sides. Even Ava Sinclair, who had moments ago joked about better lighting for Elena's tears, now sat rigid, her face pale. Shot 8. Bang, 10-point. The score was impossible, unattainable, sacred. Elena moved like a whisper through the storm, her body poetry, her soul a forge. Shot 9. Bang, 10.0. The lounge didn't breathe. Phones lowered, heads bowed. Even Grayson's heart, so arrogant a few minutes ago, stumbled now in his chest, panicked. He realized with bone-deep certainty that he wasn't witnessing luck. He was witnessing power. Real power. The kind that didn't scream or posture. The kind that didn't come from wealth or pedigree or privilege. It came from something purer, older, the kind you couldn't buy, the kind you had to bleed for. Shot 10. Elena inhaled. Held it. Time slowed. In the far corner, her mother's hospital monitor beeped softly through the live stream. The audience, watching across the world now, leaned forward collectively, hearts hammering. And Elena pulled the trigger. Bang! The board flashed. The .0 facility record broken. The lounge erupted, not with cheers but with stunned, reverent silence. Even Grayson staggered back a step, as if physically struck. Above them, the board shifted, a new name etched into immortality. Elena Cross, 100-100 record holder. The chime that played was no longer mechanical. It was triumphant. It was final. Elena lowered her rifle. Slowly, calmly, she turned to face them. Her hazel eyes swept the room like a blade, cutting through their shame, their smallness. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft, but it carried like thunder. "My father," she said, her tone steady, "taught me to shoot before I could spell my own name." She paused. "While you were learning how to double-click a mouse, I was learning how to breathe with a rifle." The words hit harder than any bullet. The audience flinched, even Major Briggs, even Director Hart, even Grayson Wolfe, especially Grayson, because in that moment, he knew. They all knew. It wasn't about the rifle, it wasn't about the jacket, it wasn't about bloodlines or bank accounts or exclusive memberships, it was about something they'd never understood. Skill, resolve, honor. Elena didn't ask for their respect, she took it, without a scream, without a boast, without a tear. One perfect shot at a time. At first, no one moved. The room, once so alive with ridicule, was frozen in reverent silence. Every cruel word hurled hours earlier now hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Then, Major Donovan Briggs, the ex-Marine who had sneered at her presence, rose slowly from his chair. He placed his clipboard carefully on the table beside him, squared his shoulders, and began to clap. Once, twice. Slow, deliberate, like gunshots in the silence. The sound echoed across the lounge. Heads turned. Eyes widened. One by one, others followed. The applause grew, swelled, until it roared like a wave crashing against the marble walls. Even those who had laughed loudest now clapped with trembling hands. Director Samuel Hart stepped forward from behind the glass wall. The silver of his hair caught the light as he moved with solemn purpose. He raised a hand and the lounge stilled instantly. His voice, when it came, was low but carried the weight of a verdict. "Elena Cross," he said, "you have redefined what it means to belong here." A beat of stunned silence. Then he turned toward his staff, eyes hard, voice sharper. "Effective immediately," he declared, "membership at Hawthorne Elite Range is no longer about pedigree, it's about performance." A collective gasp. Whispers rippled through the elite like a sudden earthquake shattering marble foundations. Hart continued, unrelenting. "Those who mocked, belittled, or disrespected this athlete today will face review," he said, his gaze raking over Miles Grant, Dr. Lydia Stone, and others who now shrank under his glare. Their earlier certainty, their fortress of privilege, was crumbling, brick by brick. A large digital screen near the entrance flickered, then updated. Record holder, Elena Cross, 100-100, new standard established. Her name glowed, not just on the screen but in every stunned heart present. Across the lounge, Grayson Wolfe stood frozen. His cocky grin long vanished. His shoulders sagged slightly, not in defeat but in revelation. He stepped forward, rifle lowered, hands open. The entire room watched. The live stream audience, now in the millions, held their collective breath. Grayson stopped a few feet away, his voice low, cracked with something raw and real. "I was wrong," he said. "I judged you by the wrong standards." He swallowed hard, the arrogance draining from him with each word. "You didn't just beat me," he said, meeting her eyes. "You reminded all of us what excellence really is." A hush fell over the room. Elena studied him for a moment. really studied him. And then, with the same quiet grace she had wielded all day, she nodded once, forgiveness without a word. Grayson's shoulders relaxed, his heart tripping over itself, a boy stripped of entitlement, left only with admiration. Behind him, Logan Price, Sienna Drake, Carter Hayes, Ava Sinclair, the entire clique who had mocked her, stood awkward, sheepish. Some lowered their eyes, some shuffled their feet, none dared meet her gaze. Even Major Briggs, a career soldier hardened by decades of command, stepped forward and offered a gruff nod of respect. "I've seen snipers in the field," he said quietly. "None steadier than you." For the first time that day, Elena allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't triumphant, it wasn't smug, it was steady, warm. A sunrise breaking over a battlefield. Later, as the sun dipped low over the California hills, the lounge began to empty. But Grayson lingered. He found her near the trophy wall, staring quietly at a dusty old photograph of world champions. "Coffee sometime?" he asked, voice soft, no arrogance left. "Maybe you can teach me how to actually shoot." Elena chuckled, a low, genuine sound that cracked the last walls between them. "Coffee's a start," she said, her hazel eyes warm. The cameras had long stopped rolling. The phones had been lowered. But the moment was real, not curated, not broadcasted, just two people meeting. Not as royalty and outsider, not as privilege and underdog, but as equals. Maybe even something more. Weeks later, Elena's name remained etched in gold on Hawthorne's walls. She wasn't just a record holder. She was a symbol, a living reminder that strength wasn't stitched into jackets or inherited through bloodlines. It was chosen, earned, and no amount of wealth could counterfeit it. In quiet corners of the world, others like her watched the livestream replays, eyes wide, hearts surging with a strange new hope. Because if Elena Cross could do it, if she could walk through laughter, cruelty, and scorn, and emerge unshaken, victorious, maybe they could too. Maybe the world still had room for the forgotten, for the underestimated, for the ones who refused to bow. And all it took was 10 perfect shots. If you believe that true skill can outshine privilege, comment 1 below. If you've ever been underestimated and proved them wrong, comment 2 and share your story with us. And if you want more stories of quiet strength and unexpected triumphs, hit subscribe and join our journey. Your voice matters here.